Peeps, you have arrived at Next Level Radio number 72. If you listen to episode number 71, I gave a brief intro on me coming of age and having injuries that I used to never have. And we talked about the magic of PRP, the difference between PRP and stem cells, and how we progress through. And then I also alluded to that we would be having a special guest on the podcast, and very excited about this, exactly what it can transpire from here, how many people we can reach, the influence that we can have from just a conversation is very cool. And I tell everybody that it's all about kind of just random introductions. And like with the podcast you listen to, Morgan Mayer Young, I got introduced to him, became best friends, podcast, got to hear an awesome story, and just things start transpiring. So today we have Dr. Gregg Kovacs, and I'm going to have you introduce yourself, and then we're going to take it from there.
Very cool. Thank you very much for having me, first of all. And I kind of done a lot of home rehearsing, thinking about like, oh, what am I going to say? What am I going to say? The fact of the matter is I grew up in a steel mill town. I grew up in a mafia town, and the only ticket out of that place was playing a sport and going to college. Youngstown, Ohio was the town I grew up. And as soon as I had a chance to get out with a football scholarship, I ended up going to Southwest Missouri State, which is now Missouri State.
Yep.
And the irony is that Youngstown State was kind of an embarrassment. Nobody would want to go there and play, and you wanted to get out. And Youngstown State, Missouri State, North Dakota State are all in the same conference now.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking that is kind of strange how life travels. But anyway, after I grew up, I went to Missouri State. I started to try to get into medical school, and I was the kind of guy that thought that all I have to do is put a suit on and walk in and say I played football, and they're going to just snap me up, and it didn't quite work like that.
Yeah.
So I ended up trying 3 times before I got into medical school.
Dang.
Yeah.
I mean, that happens quite frequently, though. I mean, it's a big feat. My cousin's going into being a lawyer right now, trying to get into that. And if you're not applying to 20 different schools, you're not doing it right.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah. And I grew up in a family that the harder you work, that's a hell of a man you are. You know.
Yep.
You could be a wife beater. You could be a drunk, you could be a variety of things, but if you were a hell of a worker, you were a hell of a man. And
yes, sir.
So that's what I learned how to do.
I think it probably was within your family, but also that town as well too.
Oh, yeah,
I mean, that's bred into it.
I think you're right.
Yeah,
right.
It happens. I'm from Worland, Wyoming, and you have the Pepsi plant, you have the Crown Cork and Seal, which makes the cans for Pepsi, and then you have a sugar beet factory. And like, you better get after it or you better get out.
Right.
That's the only way to do it.
Yeah. Well, Boom Boom Mancini, there were guys like Kelly Pavlik, another boxer.
Collini brothers.
Oh, gosh, yeah. Stoops brothers,
It's a big name down there.
Yeah. And a lot of guys went D1, and my goal was to go to Penn State. Man, I was going to be a Nittany Lion. I actually went and met Joe Pa. I met Jerry Sandusky of all people. Yeah.
That's not funny, but I went to Utah versus BYU in 2009. I'm a Utah fan, and in 2009, they still had the BCS before the playoff system, and they were playing BYU. You beat BYU, you're in the national championship. So we beat BYU, but during the tailgating, I tailgated with Jared, the Subway guy.
Oh, that is crazy.
Just weird. And at that time, he's this big figurehead, just like Sandusky was, crazy stuff. Crazy stuff. How was your time at that time? Were they, is it D2?
When I went, we were D2, and then we changed right as I got there. We went D1, 1, 2A. It's how I call it still. I just can't remember all the
acronyms.
FCS. So anyway, and we we played. I don't know if it was Northern Oklahoma State, Northeastern Oklahoma, but Gastineau played for them.
Oh,
and so that's aging me. That's dating me because that's going way back.
Yep.
Yeah, Mark Gastineau played for them,
Wow.
and there's some big guys. We had some guys actually on our team that ended up going to the Houston Oilers that time.
Yep.
We had a soccer-style kicker. We had a linebacker that he had been taking something because he was
Everybody was
buffed. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, even NAI D2, when Carroll College was on their run, they were not testing for anabolic steroids. And as soon as they had to get up with compliance, their run magically ended. And it was just kind of a funny thing to see, because it's even at the NAI level right now, and I know this today and even 2012 through 17 when I played, is they're only testing for street drugs. Obviously, it's still frowned upon, but there's easy loopholes, It's not NATO, it's not one of these big UFC drug testing people,
I lived in a house with a bunch of football players. There was 5 up in the front, and then there was 3 of us in the back. And one of my roommates found a rural doc that for $25 he'd give you your first round of anabolic steroids.
Wow.
And this guy came back and miscalculated the amount of protein he needed to take every day. So we had tuna fish cans everywhere in our place, man. And it was ugly.
Yeah.
He ended up looking like a Christmas tree, man.
Yep. So, and you see that a lot. Unless it's administered very, very well, it can get fairly ugly. Yeah. Yeah. You want to move? Can I move that a little bit closer?
Sure thing.
Yes, sir. Perfect. So how was your time there? Like playing, did you end up playing football there too?
What I ended up doing was I started as a tight end, and as I went, in fact, the irony of all this, like the way we got started talking was talking about PRP.
Yep.
And if I think back of the people I've known that got hurt in my own injuries, if I'd have had access to some of these things, that would have been a whole different game.
Yeah.
When I went there, I broke an ankle, went to a doc, and he said that he wanted to operate. My dad said he didn't want that. So, of course, I kind of didn't make my own mind up. You kind of do what your folks want you to do. So no sooner I got that cast off that leg, I jumped off the back of a truck and landed on a railroad tie. I was working at a place where my dad worked, doing some odd jobs, and I landed, tried to take all my weight off that one leg that I just got the cast off.
Bunch of atrophy and
I broke the other one.
Oh no!
So that's how I went to college. Was fresh off of 2 broken ankles. I spent my first year redshirted and rehabbed the whole time, and subsequently again. Rehab back then was a completely different animal than it is right now.
Yep.
But then again, that's going back to the late 70s. So I am dating myself.
Yeah.
We're in a different world right now.
Mm-hmm. Especially in the medical side of things.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So, but college hasn't changed.
Yes, exactly.
The competitiveness of that team is quite different. Who they're recruiting now and stuff. It's a different game.
Yeah, and in today's world, there's not as much as a difference. Like you are going to have more consistent high level guys at your big D1s, but look at a good example of just here is Jay Liggins. He played for DSU, went and played for the Philadelphia Eagles. I got to get him ready for both Philly and the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, and cool. It's right out of high school. whatever your opportunity is, and then from there you can make it whatever you want.
Yeah.
A lot of places are placing people, and look at the New England Patriots. They love taking these D2 small school guys because they know how to work.
Yeah.
And it's a much different world now, because you look at NDSU competing. SDSU's coming up very well now. They just beat NDSU yesterday, and there's not a big drop off anymore.
Right.
It's cool to see. It's
Right.
very cool to see. So did you do medical school at Missouri too?
What I ended up doing was I never claimed residency in the state of Missouri, even though I was out there for about 7.5 years between undergrad and grad school. I was still an Ohio resident, so I came back. I got into Ohio University. I applied to both allopathic medicine and osteopathic medicine.
Okay.
And at the time, I have to admit, I'm embarrassed to admit, but I didn't know the difference.
Yeah.
And I in a hurry, found out as much as I could in a hurry right before I applied. But I ended up getting into an osteopathic medical school.
Well,
So I ended up, I am a DO. I'm proud of it. I can do anything an MD can do. In fact, we have a lot of training that the chiropractors do, a lot of manipulative training, and I do believe in it. I've actually referred a lot of my patients to them because I think that there is a usefulness and a need for it.
yeah. And I think it's probably as important or more important to have that side of things too, outside of just traditional Western medicine.
Exactly.
And that could be one whole conversation in itself, and it's really cool because I get to see both sides, because without Western medicine, we would be nowhere near where we're at right now. It is the most amazing thing with antibiotics, vaccination, all this different stuff. And then you look at even the OB. That has come miles from where it used to be 10, 20, 30, 50 years ago. Yeah. And without that, we wouldn't be anywhere where we're at. But then you look at untraditional, what you could call functional medicine, regenerative medicine, and having that side, that experience plays a huge role in what you're doing. And it's kind of cool, and we'll get into it here soon, but getting to see and be exposed, not just being exposed, but believing in the science on the other side.
And there's a story to that, and we're going to get to that part about how I gravitated in that direction too.
Yep. So after medical school, obviously residency, all that, where did you end up doing that at?
I had gotten married while I was in medical school. I married a woman that was in my class. She wanted to go into OB and deliver babies and be a baby doctor, and I wanted to do ortho. And the irony is I didn't want any part of OB, and she didn't want any part of ortho. So the only place we could be together was in a hospital up in Cleveland. All the other places might take one of us, but they wouldn't take the other. So the only way we could be together is to end up in a hospital in Cleveland. The irony is that hospital was bought by the Cleveland Clinic, and my son is actually an orthopedic surgery resident there right now.
Really?
Yeah, you're talking about 30 years later.
Wow. Where did he do his schooling?
He went to school in Arizona. He's a DO also.
Sweet.
And he,
Man,
UND,
cool.
UND wouldn't even give him a sniff.
Wow.
Yeah, which, I was disappointed, but he ended up finding a way. He found a way into his residency.
It's very cool.
Yeah.
How much more residency does he have?
He's in his third of 5, and then he wants to do a fellowship in reconstructive medicine, which is like taking out total hips, total knees, and stuff that are maybe infected or kind of gone bad, and then they need to be redone. And it's
pretty full circle. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So
going from there, as we kind of come back full circle to here, what got Gregg to, of all places, Dickinson, North Dakota, and getting to that point?
This is a good story. At the end of my residency, my wife and I at the time were starting to look for jobs. Where are we going to end up? What are we going to do? I would canvass the back of my journals because there's always listings for job opportunities. And I remembered one that said North Central Midwest Hospital looking for orthopedic surgeon. And I'm thinking North Central Midwest.
Yeah.
Where in the hell is that? So anyway, call this number. And the gal was smart. She said, okay, let me ask you right off the bat, what are you looking for? And I described Youngstown.
Yeah.
I described, a multi-man group, a 400-bed hospital. I want to have an opportunity to have other colleagues there that I could refer to. And she said, I don't think this is going to be for you. And I said, well, what is it? And she said, it's a 100-bed hospital. You're going to be on your own. And there's one other guy in town. And so I remember at the time looking at my wife and I said, do you want to go there? I mean, we could at least say we went to North Dakota.
Mm-hmm.
We came in February and it was probably one of the coldest days they had. Yeah, minus something. And we weren't dressed for it. And when we were in the airplane, we had delays getting out of Denver. And
Always.
It was a nightmare.
Yeah.
And we were looking at each other across the aisle of the plane and couldn't hear a thing. And we were kind of like putting our thumbs down, like we're not going here. We're not going here. And when we showed up, the people were so genuine, so kind, so good. I mean, it was unbelievable. And by the time we got home, my parents were watching our children at the time, and they said, "Well, what'd you think?" And I said, "I think we're going there."
Wow.
And they said, "You're going there?" And they couldn't believe it. And they said, yeah, we are.
Yep. I think it plays dividends. I came from a place very similar. However, the economy crashed. And when economy crashes in towns, cities, states, a lot of drugs set in, a lot of very negative crime starts setting in. Well, amazing people. That the reason what it holds you there, like I grew up, I took this picture 5 minutes from my house. I grew up in the mountains. You come here and the people are no different. And I always say it about my gym, my podcast, my investing, all this different stuff. I would be nowhere without the community of Dickinson. Nowhere. Yeah. And you've been exposed to it much longer than I have. Yeah. And there's a bunch of successful people that want other people to have success around them. And you elevate to that level. And even the sub-communities, big thing for me is Dickinson State. That sub-community has elevated me, and I hope that I've been able to elevate them a little bit, but unlike anything other.
I got here in 1995, and I was a one-man gang. There was another guy in town, and at the time, he had an injury, so he was like somewhat partially disabled. He didn't do much surgery, and so I had the world by the ass, man. I had nobody wanted to go to him because they were tired of he sending him off to somebody else. And there would be times I'd be out to dinner with my family, and they say, "I know you're not on call, but would you come in and see this?" And I'd leave the dinner table at the Elks, which was like the place to eat.
Yep.
And go, and that's how I made hay, man. Mm-hmm. Make hay while you can. Exactly,
and it was a different city at that point too.
Yeah, and there was again, I agree 100%. It's different now, and I don't want to bash the town. I don't want to bash anybody, but oil has changed it. Yep. Just because of the migration of job opportunities, people looking for job opportunities, but. It's still a good town. Yeah, there's a lot of goodness here.
It's grounded. It's the foundation of it is in that small roots, hometown kind of feel. You still get all these families that have been here forever, and like even my wife and her family have got to see it pre-oil boom. I got here in 12, so I was in the height of the oil boom. So that's all I knew it as.
Sure,
so it was much different. But so we get to Dickinson and. Things are a little bit different, and we kind of want to transition into how you transformed your career over experiences, over things that you've gone through, and how you've got to today, how things have changed.
Well, I mean, just cut right to the chase here. I had the world by the ass. I had everything. I had a good family, good marriage. Everything was really good. And I was just at a point in my life where I wasn't taking care of myself.
Yep.
Nothing was going to happen to me. I was invincible. And, I had very few hobbies. I would fish a little bit. I would hunt a little bit. I bought a motorcycle, and I started going to Sturgis. And, when I would go down there, I'd act like a wild man, and then I'd come back home, and I'd be all grown up again. And I just kind of lost my way when I was down there this one time, and I ended up with a bad motorcycle accident.
Yep. And it was obviously a massive impact in your life.
Yep.
Completely changed everything. But there always, even now you can see it today, but there's always something good that can happen out of it. There always has to be, and kind of progress from there.
And it kind of stems back. I was in the hospital for nearly 4 months.
Yeah.
I ended up going down to Englewood, Colorado, which is right outside Denver, and it's a hospital that specializes in spinal cord injuries and traumatic brain injuries. And I was one of the best people there. It was some really sad situations where there were guys puffing on a straw to drive their wheelchair and sipping on another straw to suck their coffee out of the glass, and I didn't have that. So I was blessed by God to have been taught a very important lesson, if you will. And I know there's a lot of debate about, was I taught a lesson or not? And that's not the point. But while I was in the hospital, Western civilized medicine was failing me. It wasn't curing me. I wasn't starting to get up from this chair and walk again. And so I started to veer a little bit and think, what do other cultures believe? What do their medical practices and their cultural practices help? How do they help them in medicine and with curing? And so that's where I got very interested in stepping out of Western civilized medicine. And I know a lot of people, when I talk to them now, they might think, oh, this guy is completely wigged out. But you know what? Say what you want. There's a lot of stuff that I truly believe in now. Mm-hmm. I have kind of enhanced some of the relationships with some of the other providers here in town, just because they are doing some things that I endorse. Mm-hmm. And we'll be able to travel down this path and get.
Did you have a lot of pushback when you started kind of getting into different types of modalities?
If anything, I was independently. I was an independent practitioner. I wasn't a part of Med Center 1 at the time. I wasn't a part of St. Alexius, and I was right in the middle of the Hatfield and the McCoys, man. I let them do the fighting, and they would send everybody to me.
Yeah.
After I got hurt, I realized I needed to get back to medicine, and I would never be able to do it on my own. So I needed to send proposals out to the enterprises, and I picked Sanford just because they're taking on all comers. Get out of their way. They're mowing people down.
Yep.
They were kind enough to take me on. I've been employed with them ever since April of 2013. Mm-hmm. And getting back to your question, just because I'm part of the enterprise now, I can't do what I want to do. It has to be, if you will, approved. Yeah, kind of approved with them. And I know we'll bring things up, but sometimes I'm a little handcuffed as to what I can do.
Yeah, definitely.
And I'm just way too old to start my own practice and do my own thing. So I wouldn't dare do that.
Yeah. Yeah. But you can elicit change in outside of anybody else, but even just my experience, you can elicit a lot of change in a ton of people just with what you're doing right now. And how, when we talk about PRP, my backstory, everybody that's listening and watching knows this. I battled with addiction for a long time. I actually went to rehab twice. The first one really wasn't rehab, but in high school it started with pain medications. And it just kept on going and going and going. And then I decided my senior year of high school, I was like, I have any scholarship that I want in football and wrestling, anything I could want, and they have no idea that I'm a junkie. And so I decided, I was like, hey, I got to clean up before I go to college. So 365 days go by and I'm clean. Didn't fake anything. Didn't do anything. I passed. My stepfather was the chief of police. My grandpa was the mayor, and my uncle was an officer. So I was fucked everywhere I went. I couldn't get away with anything. And so for 365 days after I got out of football practice, wrestling, whatever, I had a pee cup at my house. So I passed that, get to college, and it got completely worse. Well, I got out of addiction. I'm now over 6 years clean off of medication and opiates. And so from there, I realized the impact that regenerative medicine, functional medicine, all this stuff can have. And obviously I got into the fitness and strength and conditioning world. But in my experience, opiates weren't going to help anything. A lot of this physical therapy, I've done it all. And I'm not one of those guys that say, oh, I did my physical therapy. Like, I'm a strength and conditioning coach. I know what I'm talking about. I'll go to sit at the table and go to bat with any physical therapy in town. And so I know what I'm doing with that. And I had an incident with my knee, got my PRP injection, and a complete 180, like complete everything gone. And I knew that there was something to this because I had lineage of patella alta with my father snapping both of his patella tendons. I have my left side repaired. Getting into this, nothing else was working. Absolutely nothing else was working, and to have something, a modality completely switch that was mind-blowing for me. So even that small change, what I'm getting to, that you can practice, because there's not a lot of people that are using PRP. I know Bismarck, there's cosmetic use of PRP, if I'm thinking right, but nobody else is really using it. And that small little change has a huge ripple, you know.
Well, you know, and not to maybe touch on a bad thing, but the irony is that, I'm gonna kind of, now that you broke the boundary, I guess I'm gonna start using some 4-letter words too.
Yeah.
But,
I got them all over.
But I know for a while, actually before I went to work, I started with Sanford in April of 13, and I got hurt in August of 10. Mm-hmm. So I went about 2 years, and I was fucking losing my mind. I was struggling, and I knew that I had to go back to something. I used to sit on the edge of my bed every morning, and I used to hold my hands over my face and say, "Well, I'm still like I went to bed last night. I'm no different. I'm no different." And ironically, I actually did addiction medicine for about 1.5 years with Heartview Foundation down in Bismarck.
Oh, okay.
Some of the best people that I ended up meeting, it was almost like they were like shrinks for me, because although I never gravitated into drugs and opiates, I stayed away at all costs. I found out that, you know, we're all people that made a mistake. We made a mistake one day, and that's what I did when I got on that motorcycle. Yep. I didn't belong on one that day, and I got on it, and I made a bad decision, and so did everybody else. And one bad, and it can control your life. And so some of the coolest young people, they were all young, coolest young people that I'd known were people that I was treating, and I almost couldn't wait to do it. And I know my family used to always say, like, I don't know how the hell you can do this, man. How can you do that? And I'm thinking, this might be my calling.
Yeah. And it's just one decision, as you said, though. Like, it's not, and there is some that they've led a complete terrible life.
Yeah.
But there's also that one person that decided, for me, it was, I started dabbling with opiates before my first shoulder surgery, but then I had my shoulder surgery, and this is what I would consider the Wild West of the pain medication epidemic, because at that point, and this was early 2009, somewhere around there, early 2000s, there wasn't and you could probably speak to this better now, but there wasn't an inter-doctor network. So I had 3 separate doctors I was going to at that time. Yeah. And so then obviously it's been buckled down on a lot more than that now. But some of the best people that can beat it, you get so much more on the back end. I got flown out to Texas probably 2 or 3 weeks before my PRP injection. I gave a speech in Austin, Texas about addiction equaling success and how you can use these things you learn into business, and a few of the points were being authentic. And using every single second. Addicts are very good about being present because they're looking for that feeling right now, you know? And so there's a lot of things that taught me a lot, man.
Well, yeah, and it's almost like I remember, I think when you were talking to Morgan, I know you brought up Jocko Willink, and I went through.
I got a tattoo with Jocko right here.
I went through a phase where I used to listen to Joe Dispenza, and I used to listen to Jocko Willink, and I read his book about how you could set yourself free was discipline
equals freedom,
humility, and taking ownership. And that's what it's exactly about, is when you're involved in addiction, take ownership for it. Be humble, and I admire you, and I admire a lot of other people for achieving the success that you have. That's really cool.
Once I got comfortable enough to know that, like, it's a completely different life. Like, a lot of times people keep on continuing calling themselves addicts. I'm an addict for life, and I get the concept behind it, but that's also holding you to these chains. And so I look at it as this completely separate life where I know I would never go back to something like that. There's no way. And it just, that's how it goes. It's, I would never change anything for it. And as you know, you've met some great people doing that. If you can make it on the other side, man, it's eye-opening. It's very eye-opening.
That was what was cool about it. I watched them change and transform their life. They were back in relationships again. They had a job. They were paying taxes. They got custody of their kids back again.
That's huge.
You know? And I mean, it was really cool, and I realized that actually helped me a lot. It helped me psychologically, and it just happened to buy me some more time. I ended up actually doing it. I was working for Sanford at the same time, and did it a little bit longer, and then actually it was pre-COVID, and they thought that the feds were going to kind of crack down on internet visits with drug addiction, and now, I mean,
it's exploded.
Exactly. I mean, if
telehealth is the new thing.
If we'd have waited 5 more months, it would have been like on fire again. But anyway, I ended up kind of concentrating a lot more of my efforts in, going back to this homeopathic, naturopathic, what do the Chinese cultures do? What do the Hindu, Indian cultures do? And some of it was kind of not for me. I was going to say kind of nutty, kind of crazy, but I think what's fair to say is not for me. Herbs, metals, things like that. But there were so many other things that I thought captured my attention and held it. And that's kind of where I'm at, and that's where I got interested in the PRP. As we said before we started the podcast, that I've approached probably 900 injections. I I know surgeons feed themselves by doing surgery, so they're probably not going to think highly of it because there's no evidence-based studies from Mayo Clinic or Cleveland Clinic that advocate its use. But the thing is, all I have is he said, she said, and
a lot of them though.
I got about 75% of people saying that it did something positive for them. And I know insurance thinks it's voodoo, thinks it's witchcraft. They laugh. I think surgeons laugh, but it is something I could still offer somebody. It's something that we do regularly, and I'm always thinking about a way to tweak something and make it a little bit better and possibly work harder. And
there's something there. There's really something there. I was looking up statistics because a lot of mine, I had my 4 shoulder surgeries and they were all labrum. Every single one of them obviously had some rotator cuff issues, bicep tendon and all that. But if you look at the success rate of slap tears in the athletic population, on top of that overhead throwing athletic population, it's not great. The statistics on superior labral tears is not great, especially going back to, because a lot of the studies, and I was diving hard into it, a lot of the studies stop at 365 days after procedure. Well, at that point, you're just now getting back into competition. The season has come back through, and now we haven't even seen how long they can sustain that success. And so I truly think there's merit to this other side on PRP and even further down the road with stem cells.
You know, again, my brain, like even just listening to you talk, there goes my brain, man. I'm starting to drift and I'm starting to think, and you could see my crazy eyes, you know, and like I could think back, fixing a rotator cuff. And I would open up this wound, and I would look at the rotator cuff, and I'll just pick an age, a 72-year-old, you know, athletic person, not overly old by any stretch of the matter. I mean, not too far away from where I'm at right now. But the thing is, I would look down into this hole that I had just created, and I thought, that rotator cuff looks like a little piece of salami. And I'm going to put this fishing line through it, and I'm going to sew that hole closed, which looked like you just crawled on your jeans, and it was like had little fuzzies on it. And then I'm really talking like a doctor now, right? But I would just think, what am I about to do? I'm going to sew this piece of salami up, and then I'm going to close it and walk out in the waiting room and say, yep, everything went well. I just sewed up the rotator cuff. And actually there's a lot of published articles, and of course it's old and maybe I don't have more recent things to cite, but if they did MRIs on people before a rotator cuff tear and then a MRI after they had it repaired, they think about 50% of people retore their cuff within 2 years. And a lot of those people didn't have pain the second time, though. Yep. And
that's not good odds.
Well, why? And so that's why I asked myself, if I was going to fix a cuff now, I would put a patch on it, because I don't think the needle and thread in that piece of salami is enough. And then I would inject the platelets underneath there, because I would try to enhance as much healing and regrowth and collagen formation as I could to strengthen that.
And that brings up the great point. It's either repairing a frail, damaged tissue or a type of regrowth and a type of rebuilding of that tissue.
Exactly.
That's the big thing, where we can deal with more tissue on this end, you know, rather than just sewing something that is already very frail.
Yep.
And you see it a lot in a lot of different populations with, and you see it obviously more than I, but shoulders, the knees. Mine was the patellar tendon, which at the time, there wasn't a ton of athletes that come back from either Achilles or patellar tendon. I mean, all your jarring and all your force production has to travel through those two. If it's going through the lower body, it has to travel through those. And so to have the results I had, obviously there wasn't any tear on this side yet, but it's showing a lot of promise, man.
Well, I know and again, maybe this is a little premature already because here I go, but the thing is, there's zones of our body that are considered avascular zones. There's one in the Achilles tendon, there's one in the rotator cuff where the circulation is very poor. It is the place that has a propensity to tear first. And of course, you look at the textbooks and in the anatomy books, and they're all going to say, well, they're 1.5 centimeters away from the insertion. Well, I'm not smart enough to remember all those things. All I know is I know they're there, which means that you're not going to bleed when you tear those things. So they don't have a chance to heal. And it makes me wonder, well, if somebody sews it up, why would it heal then?
Yeah.
So that's where my head's at right now is I'm trying to figure out how do we get platelets there?
I never thought about it like that.
Yeah. So it's all about trying to enhance the repair and it involves regenerative medicine.
Yeah. I just had this conversation with one of my athletes, and I have it on a daily, maybe weekly, but dang near daily basis. And till this day, in the athletic training population, one of the it's always the standard as soon as you get an injury, and I'll kind of talk about it, but Dr. Gabe Merkin, he was the doctor that created the RICE method and rest, ice, compression, elevation. And what it's showing now after a sports injury, ankle, knee, something of that nature, 48, you can stretch it to 72, but 48 is for icing. And nowadays, it's happening at the university level, at the pro level. We're having prolonged icing for very acute injuries that are not allowing more blood flow. If it gets us back to healing tissue, we need to increase blood flow, and we need to increase platelet counts, and we need to increase these things. So after this 48-hour window of what would be considered the acute phase of the injury, after that, we need to stay as far away from ice as we can if we're trying to enhance that tissue. Because what I tell people, I had a whole podcast about it, is inflammation is a healing response. Yeah. We need it for that short window. We need that to get that rush of new blood to the area.
Yeah. And by that same token, I mean, I know you're going to talk about or with the intention of the vasoconstriction. So you're vasoconstricting those vessels, you're reducing the amount of blood flow into that area.
Yep.
And on top of that, I mean, my big thing is when I see my patients is, and I never was a heat guy. I was never a heat guy. But the thing is, to me, when you ice something that has blood in it, you're going to turn it to jello. You're going to congeal it. How do you get that out of the area? How do you get that out of the area? And I don't know, maybe I'm kind of contradicting myself because we've talked about like injecting the platelets there and wanting them to congeal, but
that's a higher concentration, like we talk about.
True. And again, I don't know, are the platelets even there anymore? Are they, and I've always found that blood in muscles is almost like a toxin. It almost paralyzes the muscles. You don't want, like when we're closing up a wound after an operation, we want that thing as dry as we can get it. We don't want any like oozing, any leakage, because like, and I always use the word, you get donkey kicked in your thigh and somebody's MMA-ing you, and then all of a sudden they kick in your thigh.
Yep.
You won't be able to straighten your knee probably for 2 weeks because of the bruising in that large quad muscle.
Yeah.
Maybe we get heat to it. Maybe we keep it liquefied. Maybe we get your body to absorb it faster.
Yep. That's what I've been reading a lot more too and it's good right off the bat because your ice is still going to help with pain management. But the big thing, like he's finally come out and said this, Dr. Gabe Merkin, he said, I was wrong. And he's like, this was what the research showed me when I did this originally. And it came from actually an amputation, an emergency surgery he had to do that he told the people to keep it on ice and to keep it preserved. And then he iced it when they got there. So like that was his whole philosophy. Well, then this should work for acute injuries as well. But now we've seen that a lot of times heat and movement, pain-free movement is the big thing, is what we look for when we have those acute injuries. Obviously, it's a little bit different with surgeries and stuff, but you also, once pain can subside, is much pain-free range of motion is kind of what we're looking for.
Yep.
You know, it makes sense. And that gets us kind of right into the PRP. And for the people that didn't listen to last week's, give them the nitty gritty, the molecular level of PRP.
Oh gosh, yeah. Am I going to be able to pull all this stuff out? Because I always tease and say, I'm just a hick from North Dakota, man. I don't know a whole lot. I'm just a curious George, man.
Yeah.
Platelet-rich plasma is PRP, and the whole concept of it is that it's the first thing at the site of an injury. You break something, you tear something, you're normally going to bleed. Typically, you don't bleed to death because unless you've fractured multiple long bones or had a horrendous pelvic injury, you're going to stop your bleeding because the platelets are going to be available. They're going to be the first thing at the site of an injury, so they will augment our own stem cells and other biologic factors to start a healing cascade. And many think that it involves inflammation, but I still struggle with this. Mm-hmm. I can't dispute the experts. I just spoke with a doctor, PhD, the other day from Harvard, and we had an interesting conversation. But the thing is, they're convinced that it does its work via an inflammatory response that will continue through a cascade of healing and hopefully not get shut down. Hopefully not get disrupted by something else going on in our life.
Yeah. So it's from just the random research I was doing, you spinning the plasma. So it's for people that have never done it, you're taking 15 cc. How many cc's of blood usually?
15 cc's. Yeah.
15?
The kit we use is set up so that we take 15 cc's of venous blood, spin it down, and I believe the centrifuge is set at 5,000 RPMs, and we spin it for 5 minutes, 7 minutes. Mm-hmm. And I apologize that I don't even know for certain, other than I get so much help doing this that I've kind of taken things for granted anymore. But if we can max out, the kit we're using has like a syringe in a syringe. And so after it's spun down, you will then aspirate or withdraw whatever plasma is there. The maximum we can get is 6 cc's out of that 15. So if we're giving 6 cc's of plasma back into the respective area, that's the maximum we're going to be able to give.
Yeah. And from what I was looking at, depending on a few different factors, how long it's spun down, the time from when it's spun to put back into the person, but you can get anywhere from 2 to 8 times the platelet counts in that solution when you're putting it back in.
Now, let me ask you, you're the one that did the research. Did you find out that vigorous exercise before having your blood withdrawn
Yep. They did say
increase platelet dissemination in your bloodstream?
Yep. They also said that I think how'd they put it? Was it 10 to 15 or 15 to 20 of vigorous exercise prior to? Pretty much how we talked about it. Get a sweat. What I did, I had an athlete, and as soon as he finished, I jumped on the assault air bike, like the old Schwinns, and I crushed myself. And absolutely crushed myself, got it going. And for people, just very basically, we can increase the amount. You look at the blood doping that Lance Armstrong was doing. It's all coming down to platelet count and red blood cell count, and so if we can increase that, and then on top of that, the PRP.
Yep.
That's
well, and again, I'm in a situation, and again, I'm not here to bash anybody. I'm very thankful that I'm allowed to do this through Sanford. But the thing is, we're not doing any, like say for instance, we're not doing MRIs before we inject a rotator cuff with PRP and then doing one afterwards. We're not doing platelet count before you exercise and a platelet count after you exercise, because I just don't have the luxury to be doing that. I'm not doing any studies. I'm not involved in writing papers. It's just,
and the time it takes too.
Correct. So, but it's all about what we've read, about what we believe. It's what we're buying into. And even we have these little respirator wheels. We get these little old bubbas that come in, and 84-year-old, and we'll let them. They're not going to break a sweat. They're not going to get their heart rate racing, but movement of their arms and their legs before the blood draw might liberate more platelets.
Yeah.
At least I think it might.
Yeah, definitely. The same place where I got the concentration of platelets, they also talked about, and there's no published articles, journals out yet, but they were talking about, and forgive me for my arrogance for not getting it exactly right, but they were talking about, they have not shown in arthritic populations that the PRP can actually lay down new tissue, but they're showing no worsening of arthritic symptoms afterwards. And I'll send you this study they were showing. But again, that's a huge niche population in itself, arthritic symptomatic people. So they were showing not brand new tissue, because they were doing MRIs before and after. And so that's an interesting concept too. And then as much as you can or want to talk about it too, is as we progress from PRP into stem cells. And I tried to give people a very basic entry level from a non-PhD for myself. Sure. And a lot of times people associate the word stem cell with babies, and you know what I'm saying? Even my wife, I was telling her about it and talking to her about it, and she's like, and I was like, no, if you, a lot of times they're using bone marrow, stuff like that from the actual person. So
I'll open up. I'll open up. I
like it.
My life a little bit. I just ordered stem cells from Florida. My point is, and I don't know if I've ever shared it with you, is I will do anything I have to feel better tomorrow than I feel today. And it doesn't mean, I'm going to smoke a bunch of dope and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pop a bunch of opiates and so forth so I could feel better. I will try anything that might stimulate my body to help heal the day-to-day injury, the day-to-day soreness, mild aches, inflammation. I mean, we're learning that most everything is based on an inflammatory process.
Yep. From Alzheimer's all the way
Exactly. So I ended up through a series of acquaintances, I ended up ordering my stem cells. I actually talked with the PhD that trained at Harvard, that is the mastermind of this, and basically these stem cells, if you will, there is a vacuole inside mesenchymal or immature cells They have yet to find their way, which means that they could be
Anything.
steered or coached into anything. These vacuoles are inside the cell, and they have found a way to extract the vacuole, which is called an exozyme, 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 and they can concentrate them so that the actual workhorse of the stem cells are their product. And that's what I'm about to take. And I'm not injecting it into my knees or my shoulders or anything. I found somebody to put it in my vein, and
Interesting.
I'm going to try it. You
Cool.
know?
Yeah. And you said you had you'll have a series of those, 10 or whatever.
Yep.
And, again, that gets us back to just trying to be better tomorrow than we were today.
Yep.
And I think that's awesome. And I hope over a period of time, PRP is that entry drug, that we can get to insurances, that we can that's a huge hurdle.
Yeah.
That's a huge hurdle in itself, that hopefully we can get some of these modalities to flourish in our Western medicine. But there's a lot of strings attached, as you said,
Yeah.
more introduction of stem cells or even PRP means less surgeries. And there's a lot to it.
And apparently the insurances all want evidence-based articles out of Mayo, out of Cleveland Clinic, and that's the only way that they're going to justify paying for some of these things. And they're going to wait until there's a gob of them, not just one or two. They're going to wait until there's a shit pile of them.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking to myself, that's a long way off. That's a long way off. So
do what you can for you.
Correct. And it is. It's going to be for people that have money, because this is expensive treatment. And it's unfortunate. It's really unfortunate, because it's kind of like withholding. I think there's treatments for cancer. That's
a whole nother. Yeah, I think so.
And they're withholding it.
Yep.
Because natural evolution, and this is, like I said, here goes my brain, and we can run into all kinds of discussions, but they want natural evolution to occur so that people will die.
Yep.
They don't want people to live forever.
No.
And so regenerative medicine isn't going to find their way. We're not going to cure stuff and heal stuff, because they want people to die.
They want to suppress anything that goes against that narrative.
You're right. And it's horrible.
Mm-hmm.
And I like I said, I'm a simple hick in North Dakota, man. And if I could leave a little bit of my legacy around these parts, or at least raise some eyebrows and gain some interest, I think I've done my work. And this, I thank you, is my opportunity to share these things so that
100%.
we can get it out there.
And I think you have had, outside of just PRP, with everything, your ripple effect has been felt in the community. A lot of people have used your services and done a lot of stuff, and that ripple effect will keep on going. And like what we would like to do to accomplish out of this is just maybe raise some eyebrows, maybe open a perspective, just because, I even had athletes that were very reluctant because I myself hadn't had it done yet, and I wasn't having any issues. I had nothing going on. Well, he had a slap tear in his shoulder, and I was just like, let's exhaust everything first, because I know that the success rate's not great. And I really do think that this could have a huge ripple effect, that people can start seeing this other side of regenerative medicine. And then, even on top of that, how can we make this better? And we talked about supplementation, collagen, a lot of vitamin C, fish oils. I'm into PRMs, pro-resolving mediators, like some really, really dense stuff that can really help on this end too.
You know, and I guess, am I liberty to share other people's names as long as it's not a violation of HIPAA?
Yeah, you're golden.
Well, you know, I mean, you and I have mentioned Steve Ersfeld.
Yeah.
Steve's
doing amazing things.
Yeah. He and I have had some discussions about things that stimulate the endocannabinoid system, the ECS, PEA, palmitoyl ethanolamide. It is kind of like a CBD, if that's okay.
That's how the body reacts to it.
Well, what it does is it binds to the endocannabinoid system receptors, and you know the belief is the reason CBD is helping is because when it binds to the receptors, it helps augment the function of other systems like your digestive system, your neurologic system, your musculoskeletal system. So maybe people that smoke dope do feel less pain and do heal faster and I'm not like just generalizing, but because they're stimulating their ECS. So Steve and I have had some conversations about trying to find ways to reduce inflammation because that seems to be the how should I say, the influence of all our maladies, if you will.
Yeah.
So
it's every single disease boils down to chronic inflammation, every single thing. Yeah. And this is an interesting thing too. And I don't, and this is just a thought in my head. My brain's kind of like yours. I'm going like this everywhere. So from what I had heard, when pharmaceuticals and specifically opiates, the human body technically does not have an opiate specific receptor. It's the cannabinoid receptor that the opiates actually fit. So our natural receptors are the cannabinoid receptors that the opiates have been
competing
for and engineered to fit.
Interesting.
And so that's why CBD has done so well for so many people, and that's why marijuana in its whole form has done so much for people medically.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting thing. And then also this is published research that with joint injuries and even outside of just joint injuries, general orthopedic surgery, opiates, the consumption of opiates actually slows healing. So that's very interesting that I have found.
One of the crazy things that I like, again, here goes that wigged out doctor talking again, but I have a connection that can get THC and CBD for me if I want. Mm-hmm. I have asked this individual, can you get powdered CBD for me? And he said, I don't know. I might be able to. And I thought, I wonder if I diluted it with bacteriostatic water or normal saline and injected it into somebody's painful knee, if I would take their pain away.
Instead of like topical.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, and because there are probably, and I know if there's anybody watching this podcast, they said, "Oh my God, he's whacked."
We're out of there now.
Yeah. But there's got to be ECS receptors in our synovium inside the joint that these might bind to, and so I don't have to give them steroids. I don't have to give them bupivacaine or Novocaine after a surgery. I give them CBD, which I don't know is it more innocuous? Is it more harmless than some of those others? I don't know.
Yeah, I guess you wouldn't know. That's very interesting. I never even thought about that. There's so many different things. I mean, there was something wrong with my knee, but I was doing laser. I was doing CBD oil or cream, I guess, menthol or whatever you would put on there too. And I wasn't getting any relief at that point, but it would make sense to introduce that into the person that it could help.
And we've had this discussion. It's all about throwing everything at you at the right time. It's about the whole ball of wax. Trying to cut down situational stress. Trying to quit smoking. Trying to, we can cut down the things we can, but we're not going to be able to stop everything.
Not perfect.
Correct.
Yeah.
So
one thing I'm really interested in, and as we continue this series and bringing you on with this podcast, I want to see what's the duration of these 10.
Oh yeah.
What's the duration with the? There is no
recipe. It's just it's my doing. So
okay.
My thought is I know somebody that does it every week. I am probably going to see what happens in 2 weeks, and then I'll probably do another one and
interesting
another couple of weeks. The individual that I talked to, Dr. White, he told me that he had a shoulder problem, and apparently either he didn't have it diagnosed or he didn't elaborate into it. But he said that he had 8 or 9 out of 10 pain, and he injected himself with Neobiosis is the name of this product. He injected it into himself IV. And within 2 weeks, he had 2 out of 10 pain, and he said right now he doesn't have any. It's gone. And I don't know the time lapse between the injection and now, but he's pain-free. I didn't ask him, did you go see an orthopedic doctor? Did you do any rehab? Did you like augment it with anything else other than your product? But when he told me that, I'm thinking, I'll still kind of do my thing. Some of my accessory things that I do take collagen. I do take vitamin C. I try to do my own therapy and exercise and so forth. But this might be like the workhorse of my thing. So.
Yeah, I hope that the frickin' best, and I think.
Oh my God! Thanks.
Yeah, I think. This gets just 1% better.
Yeah.
1% better, man. I think that would be very, very cool. So anything that I missed directly off the bat that you...
Oh, no, man. Like I said, this was such an enjoyable talk, and like I said, my brain is just like flying now, and that's why I thought, we jumped around a lot and maybe distracted people, like they were maybe getting interested into something for a while, and then all of a sudden, but just remember, it's about trying to feel better tomorrow than you felt today, and I think we could do it without surgeries and without drugs and without.
Yep.
I think there's a way to do it.
100%. I think we definitely can. And we'll be seeing more of you. We'll be having a lot of conversations going from there. I told some people that we'll hopefully be presenting you guys even a better end product, getting more resources on that end. So
cool. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm excited, and thank you for coming on Next Level Radio. Yes, sir.
I would love to come back.
Oh, you'll get the invite.
Thanks, bud.